Hello and welcome to HW News. The protest of the farmers at the borders of Delhi has been going on for the ninth straight day. Since the agitation began on November 26, the farmers' leaders and the government have held talks twice, but both the meetings remained inconclusive. So there will be another meeting on Saturday. The farmers are demanding a complete repeal of the law, whereas the government has agreed on rolling back some of the key provisions in the law that the farmers had objections with. But as the standoff between the two continues, the protest is intensifying. 500 farmers' organization and close to 2 lakh farmers were estimated to take part in the protest initially. Majority of them are from Punjab and Haryana. However, in the last few days, the number has gone up as more and more farmers from other states, including Uttar Pradesh, have joined in. These farmers are camped at Singhu and Tikri border, whereas UP farmers are camped near Chilla border that connects Delhi and Noida. The farmers, when they began their march, were met with brute force. They were lathi charged, water cannon was used against them, tear gas were shelled at them. Cement blocks were kept on the road as a hurdle. Bulldozers were placed. Even the road was dug up at several places. But defying all the odds, farmers reached Delhi border and are now camped there. Today we will talk about the farmers' protest and Modi government's or BJP government in Haryana's response to it, and could this fiasco over farmers' protest have been avoided? Joining me is our managing editor, Mr. Sujit Nair. So first of all, as I asked, could this fiasco have been avoided? Because the farmers were asking for permission to protest in Ramlila Maidan or Jantar Mantar, but the government did not give any kind of permission, and they were also met with a brute force.
See, Arti, I always maintain the fact that this could have been avoided. There is no question about it. This could have been averted. This could have been, sorted out amicably. Now, the problem is somewhere down the line, three things. First is when you are launching such a drastic bill, such a major change in a sector. Normally, you tend to discuss that with the stakeholders, okay, which somehow wasn't done. Secondly, even in a bill stage, see, this government knew that this bill is going to be enacted very soon because they themselves have got enough majority to get ensure that it happens. So even in a bill stage, it was very imperative that we convert this into we speak to people. We have a program that goes out and speaks to farmers, especially farmers who are going to be the maximum affected by this bill. That program should be put in place. It should go to the last common denominator. Each and every farmer should be spoken to. And when I'm saying each and every farmer, I'm not saying each and every farmer, but this process should be put into place where farmers are made to understand what is this bill all about. That was not done. Now, mind you, when the PM says that the farmers were misled, okay, then I think we should take it. I mean, the government should take that as a huge failure, because if the farmers could be misled, is because there was a gap in understanding. If there was no gap in understanding, if the government would have made things very clear to them, they would understood their point of view, to taken their feedback, and then possibly rolled out the plan, things would have been better. The fact that you are saying that it is misled means that there was a gap of understanding. So that's number one. Number two, Arti, listen, when this started, first it was supposed to be, motivated agitation. It was supposed to be some kind of a plan. Then Khalistan came into picture. Then Congress came into picture. Communists came into picture. You see, somewhere down the line, till now, we hadn't really understood that this was the farmer of India. The farmer of India had a problem, and the farmer of India was out there protesting. There was a genuine problem. Like I told in my editorial, I have told in many other occasions, yes, there is a chance that there could be a lot of people who wanted to talk about Khalistan, and a lot of people who wanted to talk about Congress, and a lot of Congress people, a lot of other people would have gone to make that, to get that 2 minutes of fame. But that's not the point. The point is there was genuine grievance, and that grievance should be addressed. That grievance should have been addressed. So, other than playing, ego with them, it's a job of the minister concerned to ensure that this is addressed. Arti, these people were supposed to meet the minister once. The minister didn't turn up. See, the point is, it is not, all this is not built up overnight. It is not that kal subah hua and aaj subah sab ye, aisa nahi tha. There was a build-up. Possibly, if the minister would have met them then, you see, this kind of rigidness or this kind of, this relationship breakdown wouldn't have happened. Number one. Number two is when you're launching an act, when you're launching a bill, you have to take the stakeholders into confidence. They will have a lot of their problems. Those problems needs to be taken into consideration. There are a lot of loose ends in this act that has to be resolved before you go and say that, okay, this is done. You see, so those are aspects that were not considered. So I would definitely say that yes, this a little more careful attitude, a little more friendlier attitude, a little more communication, a little more approachable attitude would have made a lot of difference. Yes.
That brings me to a question. The way Modi government deals with the protest. Whenever there are protests, Modi government, rather than approaching the protesters amicably, they rush to brand them and label them. For example, we had a CA protest where the ministers were going around and calling protesters Desh ke Gaddar and going around with slogans of Desh ke Gaddaro ko goli maro salo ko and everything like that. Then we had this protest, farmers protest, where the farmers and supporters of the government were branding these farmers as Khalistanis. So these labeling, do you think it's a problem in the way Modi government handles the protest?
See, I'll tell you, yes. See, somewhere down the line, you can't crush. You can't say my way or highway. Or you can't take everything as somebody going against. You see, if I tell you, Aarti, that I do not agree to you, that necessarily doesn't mean that I don't like you or it is against what you're doing or I have no trust in you. That doesn't mean that way. When I say this is not correct or I don't want to do this way or I don't like this, what I mean is I may have a problem with that particular issue. Now you have to take it that way as an administrator. You see, you cannot just go and say, okay, he said, I don't like this, which means that he is against me. If not necessarily, not necessarily those farmers are against him. You think every farmer who was on the street now protesting, do you think all of them, none of them have voted for BJP? Some of them could have voted for BJP. For all you know, some of them would be even Narendra Modi supporters. But this is an issue-based thing. So the fact remains that somewhere down the line, you have to understand that everybody who says no to you, or everybody who goes against you, or everybody who says no to you or questions your policy are not your enemies. And that's something that, Narendra Modi government needs to understand and understand well. And every time, which is what I said, every time, made it into a Sikh protest, so you made it into a Khalistan, it doesn't work that way. It doesn't help. It doesn't help. That's the point, yes.
But this time around, we have seen, because the second term of the Modi government, since 2019, they came back to power, we have seen that there are major protests happening in the country. First, there was a protest against CA, now this is the farmers' protest. There were protests against labor laws as well, and some small protests in other parts of the country that have happened as well. But the way Modi government has approached to this protest is completely different. And in the first term of the Modi government, we did not see protest on these scales. Do you think that protest on these scales are going to be a normal thing from here on, considering the way Modi government is approaching the protesters?
See, I'll tell you. See, protest is a protest, Aarti. One cannot kind of make an analysis of that. See, the point that I'm trying to make is, I will go back to my earlier answer. The point that I'm trying to make it is, you see, the first thing that any government or any friendly administration should do is to address the people who are protesting. Talk to them, communicate to them, try and have a dialogue with them, try and cool them down, resolve the matter. Okay, if it doesn't happen over a series of talks and then they protest and then it's a different issue. See, here the first thing that we're met with is combat. The first thing that the pictures that you see are of those water guns and those tear gases and all of that. Okay, and then a whole host of barrage of social media stories about it being some kind of a strategy, some kind of a plan or some kind of a conspiracy. This is not how you handle a protest, especially the farmers of India. You see, they are farmers. They're one of the most important group of people of this country. I mean, they are the foundation of our country. 53% of our workforce, 53% of our jobs is from this industry, which means they are holding, they are holding this in this country. You can't deal with them. Number one. Number two is they are. You see, listen, Aarti. Like I said before, and I say once again, you see, you can't see farmer with the same way you see a businessman or a trader. You can't see him. He's a farmer. You see, a lot of things you need to understand has to be, for him has to be made, has to be communicated, has to be made clear to. He has to be treated like somebody, these kind of things, when you are changing his life, which is a very set pattern. You see, which is a very set pattern and in a very constrained area. A farmer is not the one who goes and who does businesses. Like I said, he takes his oranges from Nagpur and sells it in Chandigarh. He doesn't do that. He doesn't know how to do it. He does business with people who he is familiar with. So the point is, this kind of setup, you need to handle it far more, far more softly, far more with warmth, far more with heart, not go and, just kind of shut down. It doesn't work that way.
Just for our viewers, let me tell you that you can also ask questions to us on our YouTube comments and Facebook comments as well. So we have one question from Mr. Arvind Jagtap, who is asking us that looking at CA protest, which did not succeed, in terms of what government did with the CAA, because there was a lot of protest, there was protest to roll it back, but it did not result in anything concrete from the government side. So do you think that this particular protest of the farmers will succeed? I'll also like to add one small supplementary question to it. Do you think that Modi government underestimated this protest as well?
See, I think Modi government has to look into. See, I am not saying that therefore the farm bill will be repealed. That is not how this government functions. That is very clear now. Okay, but yes, I am sure Modi government will have to look at a lot of clauses. There has to be a lot of give and take from here on with the farmers. It cannot be just overruled or just ruled over or just taken into this thing into just go ahead and move and get things moving. See, somewhere down the line, that is not going to happen. Number one. Number two is, see, please understand, there is one thing that normally Modi government does is then this will be kept in the soft burner till it comes out again. So it can be kind of moved, it can be postponed. But if my answer is no, I don't think it can be disregarded and it will be going ahead as is. That may not happen in this case for sure.
One more question that we have from Mr. Aditya Jaina. He is asking us whether we think the farm laws are bad.
No, see, I am saying there are good and there are bad. Both. I am not saying that I have always maintained that Farm Act is not completely a disaster and all that. I don't agree to that. See, but the fact remains that there are a lot of loose ends which was not tied up. Lot of loose ends in the Farm Act, which had to be tied up before it was created into an act, which had to be tied up before it is implemented. That was not tied up, so it is not right. It is not right. So yes, till, if you ask me, in the current state, there are loose ends to be tied up. And till that loose ends are tied up, I would say this should not be launched. I mean, that's correct.
The major problem that the farmers have with the bills is also with the provision of MSP. The farmer says that the laws doesn't say anything about MSP at all. Whereas the Modi government has been constantly saying that MSP will not end, the APMCs will not end with the new laws. But do you think that there is a sort of mistrust that the farmers have with the Modi government? That they are not ready to agree to what Modi government is saying?
Precisely, Aarti, which is what my first answer was. See, these kind of issues, this MSP for instance, see, I'm sure people who designed this bill, people who designed this entire policy are intelligent people. They're experienced people. I mean, it should be made very clear to the farmer. The farmer is still confused. Imagine the farmer still feels that the MSP is over. Now, the fact remains that it is, and in the bill, if you go to see, the bill doesn't talk about MSP at all.
Correct.
So what is that a person supposed to conclude? When a bill doesn't talk about MSP, what is the farmer supposed to conclude? So now look at these. This is the loose ends I'm talking about. Same is the case with corporates. Why? How are you going to deal with the corporates? Will the corporates, ask you for their money back, their investment back if there is drought? They will ask investment back if there is floods. Will they do that? What if the corporate says no, yeah, you owe us money? Are they going to be debtors if they are not able to deliver the goods on time to the corporates? Mind you, farming is a very unpredictable job. It's a very unpredictable profession. It is dependent on the rain gods. It is dependent on a lot of other factors. So these are questions. These questions need to be tied. These questions need to be answered. These questions need to have a logical conclusion. That's the point that we are making here.
Okay, we are getting very good questions over here on YouTube as well. Bulbul Gope has asked us if the corporate companies sign a deal with the village panchayats instead of directly making a deal with the farmers, can the trust of the farmers be won by the corporates?
See, I'll tell you what. First and foremost is what I would say is corporates and farmers. Okay, farmers have never dealt with corporates. They have dealt with people, they have dealt with faces who are familiar to them. Okay, so even in an APMC, even in their cooperative society, when they go, they see faces who are familiar, and they are the people who buys their products, they buys their produce. I'm sorry. Okay, they are the people who buys their produce. So the fact remains that before you introduce corporates, before you introduce and change his life in such a big fashion, you need to kind of, first of all, take him into confidence. Secondly, give him the confidence. Give him the confidence of this. And thirdly, getting a panchayat involved, for instance, that's not a bad idea. But getting a panchayat involved will also will create a lot of other confusions. A lot of other confusions, because the moment you get a village panchayat involved, mind you, you are getting politics involved. That the same people you want this to be out of. Why are you getting this? Who are these brokers? 90% of brokers, especially in states like Maharashtra, are politicians. So the point is, somewhere down the line, a direct deal is the whole story is about direct deal. That they can directly deal and the money can be done. So that's the point that can make. And secondly, the land is not panchayats. The produce is not panchayats. The effort that a farmer put is not panchayat. So how can a panchayat give guarantee for the produce? So what right does panchayat have to give guarantee for the produce? So these are questions that needs to be asked.
Okay, we have a question from Mr. John Miranda. He is asking us, since the lockdown, agriculture is the only sector that is doing well, whereas all the other sectors have shown a signs of slowdown. So
Correct.
Was this law really necessary during these tough times?
See, yes, I agree to John. Was it necessary at this time? We should be focusing on COVID. We should be focusing on vaccines. Was this law necessary at this time? Once things are better, we could have launched the law. Yes, absolutely agreed. But that being said, see, the core problem of this law is the fact that there are loose ends. Now, even if it was launched after 6 months, while I'm saying again, I agree to what John is saying. I completely agree to what he's saying. But even if it was launched 6 months, and if it was launched in the same way and fashion which is launched now, things would have been the same. It wouldn't have made a difference. The farmers still would have been upset.
We have a question from Mr. Gurpreet Singh. He is asking us, what do we think about the corporate stocking goods to control their prices once they come in picture? And shouldn't there be any limit on how much a corporate can buy?
Oh yes. What Mr. Singh says is absolutely correct. This is the problem. You see, look at the questions. See, so many questions. These questions have no answers in the bill. At least the bill I read, there were no answers. So these are the loose ends. Absolutely correct. What is the corporate buys? Who decides the price? The corporate buys. They store it. They don't give it. They wait for the right price to happen.
But then this will also, then if the hoarding happens, this will also impact the common man as well.
It will only impact the common man. It will not impact the farmer as much as it will impact the common man. It will not impact the farmer as much as it is. Secondly, what happens if if the corporate starts controlling what the farmer farms. You see, what he sows, if the corporate starts controlling that, and he tells a sugarcane farmer to start growing cotton, or a cotton farmer to start growing, say, grapes. I mean, that is not possible, but all the same. If the point is, but certain crops, if he starts controlling the crops, because that is more in demand, these are things that will have natural problems. These are things which will have natural problem, and that's correct.
Now, that brings me to another important question. Like we have seen, Modi government is constantly saying that farmers are being misled by the opposition, by some Khalistani propaganda and everything else. On the other hand, the farmers are saying that this particular law that we don't want is being thrust upon us. What do you think, in a democratic system, if a sector for which the bills have been made, or for which the acts have been made, if the particular sector for which it has been made is not accepting it, then what should the governments do in this scenario?
See, Aarti, I'll tell you, here the fair way of looking at this is there is a bill launched. Okay, the bill was launched in the parliament. It got whatever the number of approvals that it needed, and the bill was converted into an act, both in the Rajya Sabha and in the Lok Sabha. It got cleared, it went to the president signed it, it got cleared and got made into an act. Now, who is sitting in your Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha? The people representatives are sitting in the Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha. So, the fact remains that, technically speaking, as far as the law is concerned, as far as our constitution is concerned, the bill has to be implemented. Okay, it is ready for implementation. Okay, to that extent, yes, what the government is doing is what it should be doing. That's not the problem. The problem is now to communicate this bill, and the problem is, like you rightly said, to take a sort of a concurrence to this bill. Okay, this normally happens. It is not usually, it happens in most of the cases where there are changes in a sector. The stakeholders of that sector is called in. There is a discussion that takes place, and this doesn't happen after the act is launched. This possibly happens when the bill is being made. Okay, so this sector is called, the stakeholders are called, the stakeholders, there is discussions, and post the discussions with the stakeholders and a general agreement, that is when it forms into a bill and then later on into an act. Now, the problem here is, by the look of it and the fact that so many people are on the streets, which means that a large section of the people of the sector was not taken into confidence, isn't it? My logic makes sense?
Correct. Yes.
A large section of this sector was not taken into confidence. I am not therefore saying that the entire sector is not with it. You know what? Actually, in a way, because if there is not a single farmer union which is coming out and saying, including the Bharatiya Kisan Sangh, okay, which is a RSS unit, they are not coming and saying that nay, the farmers are not right, or this bill is right, these farmers are all wrong. They are not saying that. Not a single farmer union has come out and said that the farmers are all wrong. What does that mean? Some may be actually participating in the protest because it directly affects them. Some may be passively participating in the protest by saying that theek hai, tum log karo. We are not saying that it is wrong. So the fact remains that, therefore, we can conclude that, you see, the sector is not quite comfortable with this bill and with this act. So that's the way I would put it, if you have to derive it in a way.
Okay. But now, as we are seeing this is the 9th day and the deadlock is far from ending. Tomorrow there is another meeting. But given the way the last 2 meetings have gone, seems like that there will be more such meetings in the future. But what do you think? We have seen how farmers had this issue with the government, where the farmers were offered lunch but they refused to take lunch from the government as well. So this kind of friction is there. How the government can end this friction with the farmers in the first place?
See, I tell you, I told this earlier in my editorial, I repeat. You see, there has to be warmth, and there has to be a heart into the conference or whatever, into the talks. Okay, it cannot happen with such cold vibes. This will go nowhere. Okay, this will not conclude. That's absolutely bad for the farmers and also bad for the government. Okay, now we need to understand few issues. You see, there are some 2.5 lakh odd farmers standing there. Okay, in the protest. You see, the farms are empty. There is nobody farming there.
True.
Okay, now that's going to have a huge impact on the produce. That's going to have a huge impact on the economy, especially the Punjab economy. Okay, now the point is, therefore, Indian economy. So these are things which are related. So to sort this issue and ensure that these people are sent back home is an imperative thing for the country, for the simple reason that it is not only that our farmers should be happy, which is priority, it's also that it should not suffer, our economy should not suffer, the country as a whole should not suffer. So there is a lot is at stake, Aarti, here, which we need to understand. It is not just a protest that you are witnessing. It is not just about the Modi government and the protesters and all of that. It is not just that. We need to go beyond it, because this cannot carry on like this. There has to be an end to this. There has to be an amicable end to this, ideally. A very amicable end to this, and that's something that I think both the parties to a certain extent has to focus on it, and it is imperative that a cordial, warm environment is somehow built. Some kind of a trust, some kind of an activity, some kind of a step from the government, some kind of a action from the government. Maybe the Prime Minister going and talking to them, addressing them, or something of that sort. I don't know. I mean, I'm just thinking aloud. But some action where there is some amount of warmth, some amount of this coldness has to come down, is what I'm saying.
Okay. Well, but as of now, as the things stand right now, we have seen that there is a deadlock and the protest is intensifying. People have said, several unions have said that December 5 is the date that we will intensify the protest, and more unions, even the taxi union, even the truckers union, transport union has joined in and has said that they will have a conversation with their member parties, and they will also launch a chakka jam from December 5. So where that goes, that also we have to see whether this will get into a nationwide protest for farmers. That also we have to see. But one thing is for sure, that the government should act swiftly and they should come out with a solution as soon as possible. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
Now be the first to know about the latest updates on our new news app. Go on your Android or iOS, search for HW News Network. Download our app, choose the language you prefer to get updates in, and be up to date with the latest news.